Perhaps one of the oddest champions in the League of Legends is the Yordle known as Amumu. His life before joining the League remains unknown, especially to Amumu. All he remembers is that he woke up alone inside a pyramid within the Herojima desert. He was entwined in mummy wrappings and he could not feel his heartbeat. Furthermore, he felt a deep sadness that he could not entirely explain. He knew he missed his parents, though he could not remember who they were. Dropping to his knees, Amumu wept in his bandages. No matter what he did, it seemed he could never stop his tears or sadness. Eventually, he stood up, determined to wander the world to discover his past. Amumu traveled all across southern Valorant, a feat that is not easily dismissed. While Amumu still hasn't learned much about his past, he has learned a great deal about who he has become. He is most assuredly undead, though he harbors none of the evil characteristics typical of undead beings. He also seems to keep trouble at arm's length. Amumu was able to traverse all of southern Valorant without so much as a single bad thing happening to him. He was just sad, and the people and beings he encountered eventually shared his sadness. Ultimately, he made his way north across the Great Barrier to the Institute of War, the home of the League. Amumu's story was compelling to the summoners he met there, and they invited him to take part in a League judgment. His success within the League as a champion has given Amumu something he desired: a home. With his present life secured, he now hopes the friends he has made will help him discover his past. Amumu's story is so sad. Well, summoners, that was Amumu the Sad Mummy. I hope you enjoyed that lore, and I will continue to make songs and stories for you guys. So until next time, I will see you on Summoner's Rift. This is Natsumi.
Aatrox is a legendary warrior, one of only 5 that remain of an ancient race known as the Darkin. He wields his massive blade with grace and poise, slicing through legions in a style that is hypnotic to behold. With each foe felled, Aatrox's seemingly living blade drinks in their blood, empowering him and fueling his brutal, elegant campaign of slaughter. The earliest tale of Aatrox is as old as recorded history. It tells of a war between 2 great factions, remembered only as the Protectorate and the Mage Lords. Over time, the Mage Lords won a series of crushing victories, leaving them on the brink of obliterating their sworn enemy forever. On the day of their final confrontation, the Protectorate army found themselves outnumbered, exhausted, and poorly equipped. They braced for inevitable defeat. Just when all hope seemed lost, Aatrox appeared among the ranks of the Protectorate. With but a few words, he urged the soldiers to fight to the last before throwing himself into battle. His presence inspired the desperate warriors. At first, they could only watch in awe as this unknown hero cleaved through their enemies, his body and blade moving in unison as if one being. Soon, the warriors found themselves imbued with a potent thirst for battle. They followed Aatrox into the fray, each fighting with a furious strength of 10, until they had won a most unlikely victory. Aatrox vanished after that battle, but the Protectorate army's newfound fury did not. Their surprising triumph led to many more until they were able to finally return home victorious. Their countrymen hailed them as heroes, but though they had saved their entire civilization from destruction, darkness lingered in the mind of each warrior. Something within them had changed. Over time, their memories of battle faded, only to be replaced with a grim revelation. Their acts of heroism were, in fact, brutal atrocities committed by their own hands. Tales like these appear among the myths of many cultures. If they are all to be believed, Aatrox's presence has changed the course of some of the most important wars in history. Though these stories remember him as a savior in dark times, Aatrox's true legacy may be a world filled with conflict and strife.
As the royal family of Demacia for centuries, members of the Light Shield line have spent their lives waging war against any who oppose Demacian ethics. It is said that every Light Shield is born with an anti-Noxian sentiment in his blood. Javan IV is no exception, even though he is the first Light Shield born to the age of the League of Legends. As his forefathers had before him, he led Demacian troops into bloody engagements with Noxian forces, and on many occasions he has bled alongside wounded allies and fallen comrades. In his most crushing defeat, he was outmaneuvered and captured by a Noxian battalion under the command of Jericho Swain. This mistake nearly cost him his life at the hands of Urgot, but he was rescued by the Dauntless Vanguard, an elite Demacian strike force led by Jarvan's childhood companion, Garen. Those close to him believe that his capture changed him. Xin Zhao was quoted as saying, "His eyes never seemed to look at you, only through you to something he could not look away from." One day, without warning, Javan IV handpicked a squad of Demacian soldiers and left Demacia, vowing to find atonement. He began by tracking and hunting the most dangerous beasts and bandits he could find in northern Valeron, seeking something that only he understood. He ventured south of the Great Barrier. He wasn't heard from again for nearly 2 years. After many assumed the worst, he returned to glorious fanfare on the streets of Demacia. His Demacian plates were adorned with the bones and scales of creatures unknown. His eyes bore the wisdom of someone twice his age. Of the 12 soldiers who had departed with him, only 2 returned. In a tone as cold and steady as steel, he swore to bring the enemies of Demacia to their knees.
Sejuani was weaned on hardship and reared on barbarity. Where others succumbed to the harshness of the Freljord, she was tempered by it until pain became power, hunger an encouragement, and frost an ally in calling the weak. Through her ordeals, she learned that to thrive in the endless winter, one must become just as cold and unforgiving. In Sejuani's eyes, her followers either have the mettle to endure or the right to die. Once she has conquered the Freljord, she knows that those who survive will form a nation to be feared. As a child, the leader of the Winter's Claw watched her tribe's numbers slowly dwindle. Cold and starvation took all but the most resilient. She was the only one of her siblings to survive to her 10th year, leaving Sejuani sure that she too would die in misery. In desperation, she sought spiritual counsel from her tribe's mystic, but the seer did not foretell Sejuani's death. Instead, she prophesied that Sejuani would one day conquer and unite the divided tribes of the Freljord. Armored with absolute faith in her destiny, Sejuani pushed herself to extremes that would have killed anyone without her will to endure. She walked into blizzards without food or furs, and trained while frigid winds raked her flesh. She clashed with the strongest warriors of her tribe, one after another, until her legs gave out beneath her. When she assumed leadership of her tribe, Sejuani commanded her warriors to follow her example. under her rule, the tribe grew stronger than they had ever been. In the end, it was an offer of peace rather than an act of war that began Sejuani's campaign of conquest. On the first day of winter, envoys from Ash's tribe approached Sejuani's camp bearing a gift of Avarosan grain. Ash's intent was clear. If Sejuani united with her tribe, the Winter's Claw would never go hungry again. To Sejuani, the gift was an insult. In Ash's tribe, she saw men and women, slight and soft, who preferred to farm instead of fight. Her contempt for them was absolute. Sejuani gathered her people and set the grain alight. She proclaimed that Ash's offer of charity would bring only weakness. Stripping the envoys of their supplies, Sejuani sent them back with a message. The Winter's Claw would prove to the Avarosan that only the strong deserve to survive in the Freljord. As the grain burned behind them, Sejuani rode out with her warband to inflict the first of many painful lessons to come.
To Vi, every problem is just another brick wall to punch through with her gigantic Hextech gauntlets. Though she grew up on the wrong side of the law, Vi now uses her criminal know-how to serve Piltover's police force. Vi's brash attitude, abrasive humor, and blatant refusal to follow orders can often infuriate her by-the-books partner, Caitlin. But even the sheriff of Piltover cannot deny that Vi is an invaluable asset in the fight against crime. As a child growing up in the lawless outskirts of Piltover, Vi learned to rob and cheat to get by. Stealing and stripping Hextech hardware gave her the skills of a master mechanic, while life on the streets taught her self-reliance. When she was 6, a ragtag group of criminals took a shine to the young delinquent and brought her into the fold. By the time Vi was 11, she had become a seasoned accomplice, and she relished the thrill of every heist. Vi's attitude changed when a raid on a mining facility went bad. She was forced to decide between fleeing with her crew and trying to save the innocent mine workers from a collapsed tunnel. Vi chose to play the hero. While searching for a way to free the mine workers from the rubble, she discovered a damaged robotic mining rig. Improvising, she wrenched off the huge fists and modified them into makeshift Hextech gauntlets. Fitting the heavy weapons to her tiny hands, the young girl flexed her arm and threw a powered punch at the rubble. The force of the blow blasted away the rock. With the workers free to escape, Vi fled the scene. After that job gone wrong, Vi severed her connection to the crew. She returned to a life of solitary crime, but stole only from other criminals. As the years went by, Vi modified and improved her Hextech fists, allowing her to bust up heists and snatch loot with ease. Eventually, word of her notoriety reached Caitlin, the famed sheriff of Piltover. Rather than seek Vi's arrest, Caitlin offered the criminal a way to pay her debt to society. Work for the law in Piltover. Vi laughed. To her, a job that let her beat up crooks without forcing her to run from the cops sounded perfect. She immediately accepted. Caitlin now struggles to keep Vi in line, and Vi treats Caitlin's orders as mere suggestions. But when they work together, they are feared by all lawbreakers in Piltover.